Hey guys, welcome back to Get a Garage. My name is Mike. If you've seen in our last video, we got a Jeep CRD, Liberty CRD engine. This is a 2.8 liter. This one is no good. We have a pretty significant hole here in the block, so it is definitely no good. We are going to tear this down and see what is salvageable from it, so we can start either collecting parts, kind of decide whether or not it's worth it to rebuild what we have or what we need to do. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to show all the way around the engine and kind of the spots that we haven't been able to see before. So if somebody's working on any of the other videos we've done, like the head studs, rockers, and lifters, where we remove the intake, where we remove the head, some of the shots that we got on those videos were not the best, so figure maybe we can get some better shots on this one. I'm just going to start diving in here. If I get to a spot where I think we might need to show a little bit more, get into a little bit more detail, I'll stop. We can kind of streamline a lot of this, but I may pause and just like show you like, hey, check this out, there's something cool here, or this is a spot you might want to remember for another video, just to kind of get you a real good idea to see with the engine out of the engine bay. It's going to give you a little better idea as to what you're working on. So reverse threads. Now here's a good shot of the one that we got inside of the pulley. That usually we have the fan here and stuff, so we can't really see this. So this is a nice shot to be able to see that. Don't know if I'll be able to get... Oh, look at that, fits right in. See if this rotates at all. It does rotate. That's kind of cool. All right. This one's also reverse threads. Just out of curiosity, let's take a look. This timing belt actually doesn't look too bad. Just for sake of how well this one might have been maintained. Well, I'm going to take the tensioner off next. My tensioner tool is actually broken because I got one of the inexpensive kits off of eBay. Taking it off. If you are doing the timing, highly recommend checking out our timing belt video. But yeah, the belt could have seen some better days, but overall, I mean, it still has some writing on it, so it's not really that old. You want to be careful if you do this, not to leave the pins in place if you're doing any timing work. I prefer to take them off without the pins in there. Try and hold it as much as I can. All right, there's a rear housing covers coming off next. We do have a hidden one back in here. That one's the one that's usually hard to see from the... And right here also is kind of hard to see from the top. And then we have these small ones. Gotta take the pulleys off. These are also reverse thread, if I'm not mistaken. That one kind of fell apart. Those are interchangeable, so if you end up doing those, you can do them in whichever order you want. There we go. All right, so we got our cams, we got our intake, and we got our head. Let's see what else we gotta do to take this off. Get the viscous heater out of the way. Exhaust manifold bolts are 13 millimeter. Let's try and pull them off. Snapped it. That one was already missing. Let's get the turbo bolts off. That one bolts that out. Alright, so before I can get that last bolt off for the turbo, I need to get the turbo drain off, and that's 2.8 millimeters. This is hard to do out of the car. I can't even remember how I did this while it was in the car. Look, what a pain in the butt. Right. And we got our Sasquatch Parts turbo. This thing is in pretty good shape. No shaft play whatsoever. That's cool. Alright, I got the bolts here around the outside of the water pump off here. See if they're nope. A little coolant. O-ring. Up in there. That guy right there. I need it. And then that one below. So the one on the top, barely get in there. Maybe with a swivel. That one will need a wrench more probably. Maybe from the bottom. Oh yeah, I think that worked. A little extra leverage, so this one would be a real pain in the butt to get to on the vehicle, that's for sure. There's only one left. We're going to work on the exhaust manifold. It'll give me a little bit more access. I would have liked to have that soak for a little longer, but what can you do? Not bad, we didn't break any except one. Alright, there we go. So total we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts on the exhaust manifold. Now it should be easier to get that one, that last guy up in there. This side is pretty much done. You do have towards the back here, both of the last two exhaust bolts are broken off. So right off the bat, we're gonna have to have something done about that. I had them helicoiled on my other Jeep, so maybe we'll have to do the same. I didn't do it, I brought it to a machine shop. They only charged me like 20 bucks, totally worth it. But we are at the top here. It's really all that's left to start really getting into this. We got the injectors and we got the intake. I guess let's see what we can do here. Here we're looking from the top down. We got our injectors right here. Fuel rail can stay on for now. If you're doing any of this in the engine bay, get the fuel rail out of the way. It's gonna make your life that much easier. I'll start with these little clips. You're supposed to reuse these. I did reuse them last time and it worked out just fine for me. I just bent them back a little bit. You can be really careful with these clips. They're brittle and they're plastic, but they do pop off if you wiggle them a little bit. Grab them with a pair of pliers and twist and pull up. That off to the side. These are 17 millimeter if I remember correctly. This one's sticking. Need to get a smaller wrench on the inside of that injector. 13. The injector bracket hold downs, those are 10s. Last time I did this, I sprayed a bunch of penetrating fluid in there to try and loosen these injectors up because they tend to be a little sticky. I do not have the proper injector removal tool for this, so we are gonna have to make do. Hopefully I won't have to buy one. First one's coming up. Got my first one out. Came up with a little washer. Let's see how lucky I can get with the rest of these. If they don't come out, don't pry on the valve cover. It'll crack, you'll break it. It's not very strong. All right, I just used that to spin this a little bit. Let's see if we can pull it up now. It was just like I couldn't budge it at all. All right, there we go. There's two. This one's also got the washer on it. Nice. If you're rebuilding your engine, you should number these. You'll, oh, look at that, number 3 is coming right up too. There's a lot of grease and gunk in that little pocket. That's all right, number 3. And when you're in the car, this 4th one is the hardest because there's a lot of leverage. You're reaching your arms way back. All right, guys, sorry about that. My camera died, battery died. So we left off with getting injector 4 out. So that is out now. Basically what we have left to do is remove the intake here and then pretty much remove the head. Those are the only 2 things left. However, before we can remove the intake, there's a couple things that's attaching it to the rest of the engine. So we have our fuel inline here that's going to be stopping us. We have our dipstick tube that's going to be blocking us. And we have our little distribution block over here that's also going to be blocking us, which this one actually looks like it's broken. So I have to start making a little inventory list of things that I'm going to need to get. So for starters, let's go ahead and disconnect the fuel incoming line. That is a CP17 as well. Yep. Dipstick tube. And I always have a hard time getting this off. There we go. Alright. And now we're going to go for the intake. Those are all 10mm bolts. There are some long ones, there are some short ones. Keep an eye on where they come from. Got to take the this PCB valve, whatever they call it, off. If you're going to pry on the intake, do it very carefully. It's easily broken. Whoops, missed one. That went down into an injector hole. Definitely something to be wary of is I'm taking this all apart, so it doesn't matter. Like if you're not taking the head off, definitely block off your injector holes as you're continuing on through this. And then once you get the intake off, be careful not to drop anything down into the head as well. As I've seen before, taking this off destroys the rockers. Some of these are actually really broken. This is right above the broken hole in the block. We have a snapped off one here, and that's actually broken in a spot where you wouldn't normally see. Normally it will come out of here and pop off on that side, from my understanding. So what ends up happening here is the intake gasket, it sticks to the intake. So when you try to take this apart, a lot of these will pop off because the intake needs to go under these rockers. So there's the intake gasket. All of the intake side ones are in good condition and they haven't come apart. The fact that these are a common failure point, it's not worth trying to keep these in anything that I rebuild. So if you're gonna reuse yours, which I don't really recommend, especially if they're the original ones, depending on the mileage of your vehicle, make sure you pay attention to where they came out from, because you want to put them back into the same hole that they came out from. I have 2 dowel pins for locating. There you got one right there and one right there. Want to make sure that you keep an eye on those and that you don't drop them down in, especially if you're not getting back in here for anything deeper. At this point, I'm ready to pull the head. I just got to loosen up all the bolts. What I tend to like to do is just loosen them a little bit and then go back and loosen them a little bit more. These are the OEM torque to yield bolts, so we're not going to save those. If anything, I'll probably go with head studs if I can. That is definitely the recommended, at least for me anyway. I mean, some people say not to use them, but I can't see why not. That seems to be, especially, we're gonna check these and see if this head is lifted at all, because on mine, some of these bolts were extremely loose. I think they're 11. I think this will be okay. I can't get these loose with this. These are on there good. That's got to be over 200 foot-pounds. These are way over torqued. Could be because whatever happened to the engine, so there's some bubbles coming out of that. That's funny. All right, before I pull this off, why don't you guys go down in the comments, tell me what kind of carnage do you think is gonna be in there? Is this head destroyed up here by piston number 1? Can we reuse this head? The rod is bad, but do you think the piston's any good? How's the liner? What's going on down in here? Go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Honestly, I think the head is no good. I think the piston contacted the head, and maybe that's what broke the rod. I'm not sure, but go ahead and leave me a comment. I'm curious. Glow plug harness is still on. The hose going down to the EGR cooler is still there. There we go. And the verdict is the top of the piston doesn't look bad. Look at this engine. I mean, all of these pistons, you can still see the cross hatching in here. It actually looks like it's in really good shape. I mean, I'm not sure if this has ever been rebuilt or what the history is behind it. This one's got a little bit of scoring, but I mean, like, you can still see a lot of that cross hatching in there. It looks pretty good. This one, this is the bad piston. We got some damage right there, but overall it looks like it's in pretty decent shape. I don't know if that can be fixed. I don't know what it looks like on the bottom, if it's damaged any other spots. So we'll have to, now that we've got it to this part, we'll flip the engine, take the oil pan off, and see what it looks like from the bottom. That's where we're going to really see the carnage. On the other hand, the head, does not look too bad. I don't see any indication of this was just me rubbing it a little bit right here to take a look at it. I mean, like, I think this looks pretty good. I don't know if this has ever been resurfaced, which you're really not supposed to on these. I don't see any obvious signs of damage here. I mean, we'll have to dig into it a little bit more and see just how bad it really is, but overall it looks like we might have a head. You're supposed to match the cylinder liners with the piston. I believe they're supposed to be matched, so we'll have to do a little bit of research. I've not rebuilt one on the bottom end before, so I'm just kind of looking for what might be some signs of damage. And it's a little crusty, but doesn't really matter because we got a different block for that. So we'll flip this thing over, take the oil pan off, and see what she looks like from the bottom. These look like 8s. There we go. Can't tell if this is part of like a windage tray. I haven't been in the bottom of one of these before. This is part of bearing material. But we got it open. So we'll have to dig into this a little bit more and see what we really got here. Check that out. This is so chewed up. It's almost like it continued to run on 3 cylinders for a minute. There is another hole on the front of that. It was hiding behind this bracket, couldn't see it. Alright, you probably won't be able to see this, but we got the rod is loose in there, it's knocking around. We'll show it here in a second. I'm gonna pop it out if I can get it out. Still attached to the piston. It broke off of the crank side. So I'm gonna try and pop this out, and we're gonna look and see at the dual windows in this block here in a little bit, because it did poke a hole in both sides. So okay, so we got this thing flipped onto the driver's side. This is the bracket for the injection pump, and we need to get this all off too, so now's a better time than any. This is a 27 millimeter for this bracket here, which I'm not sure if it needs to come off. We'll leave that for now. Let's get the rest of these bolts off. They look like they're probably 13s. Let's see. We got another bolt down in here under the injection pump, behind it rather. So these are 13 millimeters. We're gonna have to try and get in there with a wrench. So look at that. Well, crank's definitely no good. Oil pickup tube is bent, damaged. But Jesus, that thing is destroyed. Here, let me Right through, front and back. It also damaged this bracket when it poked through. Yeah, I guess this could probably be reused. It's not as bad as I thought. But the piston, or the rod rather, was jammed right up here. So it was, I had to pry it out to get it out of the engine. Some stuff here on the bottom I guess we can take off. This oil pickup tube is dented. We'll see if we can take that off. Wow, it actually hit right there pretty good, and that's part of the block that was stuck to it when I went to take it out. So this is no longer round, so I'll need a new pickup tube. This is balance shafts. Oh, these actually don't look too bad. Yeah, we can reuse that. That's cool. I think anyway, we'll have to see. All right, we have a few more things to take off here. We're gonna start with the getting the pump off first. I believe this crankshaft pulley's gotta come off. And then we have the EGR, we have the oil cooler, and after that we can take the crank out. So I'm just gonna get started here. I had a feeling this might be the case. It's moving just a tad, but not enough to really get it off. And I'm not sure which way it really needs to go. So I'm gonna have to consult the manual and see which way this one comes off. All right, so I did manage to get this bolt loose. I tried with leverage. I tried with just jamming some stuff up against the crank to stop it from spinning. I actually bent my engine stand a little bit. I also bent a this tire iron trying to do this. Eventually what I ended up doing was heating it up with just a regular propane torch for about 2 or 3 minutes, concentrating the heat here on the bolt, and then spraying it with some penetrating lubricant and using my impact on it back and forth, and finally it broke free. I looked in the manual and I couldn't find anywhere about whether this was regular thread or if it was reverse thread. Well, come to find out, this is actually reverse thread. So if you are getting this deep into the engine, just something to keep in mind, this bolt is reverse thread. The crank pulley here comes off. It is keyed, so something to keep in mind. I don't think the key will come out. It looks like it's in there pretty well. However, it came off pretty good. So something to keep in mind. Now we can get pump off. There's just this is just a cover, I think, and there's just a few. It looks like 8 or 10 millimeter. I can never tell. Those are 8s. Looks like there's a gasket here, probably covering some more bolts. There's some nasty looking gunk in there, so I don't know if this is any good. Some bearing material looks like chewed up in there. So this must have ran for a bit. That's just like on the outside. We'll have to get inside to see what it looks like. Looks like some bad material might have gone through this pump. I don't see any in there right now, but it doesn't look too great. I don't see any material in there initially, but also it doesn't look the best. So in the meantime, I need to get all that off so we can get this crank out. I don't need the block. The block is destroyed, so we don't need that. But I want to make sure I save everything else that I possibly can, just in case there's something that I end up needing later on down the road. Okay, we got the EGR cooler and EGR valve here that we are going to pull off next. So apparently there's a school of thought that says not to delete the EGR because the EGR valve operates as like a wastegate for our turbo diesel. So I may have lost the EGR on mine, and I am contemplating, and I may have to do a little bit more research to re-add this. Now I have the Pro Vent, so the Pro Vent's going to eliminate a lot of the sticky oil mess that's getting into the intake, whereas the EGR being removed is eliminating a lot of the soot. So having the EGR back on shouldn't really do any damage. It should just get eaten up by the engine, but I'll have to do a little bit more research on that and see what the actual real school of thought is 100%, because I've heard it both ways. So, and we got our oil cooler. They are also 10s. So there's 4 along the bottom, 2 along the top. Yeah, 4 along the bottom, 2 along the top. And this has probably got a pretty decent, oh, the gasket is not too bad, but this is a pretty bad design. Luckily this isn't a failure point on these, because if it was, you would have to remove the whole engine mount off of the engine to get this off. I guess you don't have to remove it, you just have to loosen it. However, that'd still be extremely big pain in the butt to do with the engine in the vehicle. We got our oil supply right here. It's a 22 millimeter. That should be the crank position sensor if I'm not mistaken. Got that guy right there. I was reading the manual and it says to replace the liners, the pistons, and everything all at the same time. So that's going to be a pretty significant bill, but I feel like I should save the rest of the stuff just in case I can use it. Already taken this one out. Piston is right here. It's in decent shape as far as I can tell. I don't see any damage to the skirts. The rings look like they're in decent shape. They sprung right out. They're not stuck in there. There's no damage to the piston that I can tell. So if it's possible to hold on to these and just get the broken stuff that's on piston 1, that would be great. These are E14s. They're not quite E14s, I think they're probably E13s, but I don't have one of those. So this is number 2. And you can see after 190K, it's in pretty decent shape, although you did just see a piece of bearing material fall out. Not too bad, really. I'm actually kind of impressed on the condition of the rest of the pistons, considering what happened to this engine. Same thing. Pretty impressive. My camera died, so I don't know what I got in the last clip. We got everything off of the block here. We got it up on the bench. See what we got behind here, because the crank is coming out this way with its bearings and everything all attached to some like brackets and mounts in there. So I'm not 100% sure how this is all going to come out yet. We are going to learn together. This is a T50. I don't know if this is going to work or if I'm just going to snap my tool, but we're going to try. Let's see what we got here. Nice. There's our flex plate. That was loose. Not loose. These two top ones were extremely loose. All right. Got that one off. That's a 10 millimeter up there. We got two of them up there, and then we got a couple other bolts around the outside. They're just 13s. Would you look at that? The next step basically here is to remove, this is the rear main seal on here. The way to remove this is we have to thread some bolts in. At least this is the, as far as I can tell based on the manual, it's not super descriptive. And just kind of tighten those in, and that'll help to pull it off. And you can kind of see it's already starting to separate, so looks like we got the right thing there. We're supposed to do it evenly. There we go. Aha! Things are starting to look a little bit better now. We got some more bolts in here. One thing I didn't do was I did not take off the oil squirters, and that is one of the steps in the manual. So I may have to put this back on the engine stand and get that taken care of. Okay, we are back over to the engine stand, and what I found is, first of all, in my particular situation, the oil squirters are not in the way of removing this, at least as far as I can tell. It does say to also remove the tone wheel for the crank position sensor. I don't think that's going to be in the way either. It does say that we need to remove these with a special VM tool 1069, which I don't have. So I did a little bit of looking here. It looks like we can pull them out with just a bolt. I don't know if I'm going to have to like pry on it at all, but they do seem to come out not too bad. You might need to use a slide hammer if yours are really stuck. We'll see if I can get all of mine out here. Thread it in pretty far. Get a good bite on it. And see if we can pull it up. See, that one's stuck. Might need a pair of pliers or something on that. Try and use this like a slide hammer. Set it down there and that seemed to work pretty well. That's the third one. It looks like that's all that's holding the this crank in place. Let's see if it moves in and out any further now. Sure does. That's great. Problem is now I have it back on the engine stand. I can't get the crank out, so I'm gonna have to put it back over onto the lift. All right, I don't know what we missed there. The GoPro died on me again. Those things' batteries are horrible. So we're just trying to get this. Oh my God, this thing is heavy. So you want to make sure that if you're taking this out, you mark these journals here, these pieces, because they line up to a very specific place. And I think that's about all that's really left on here that we're going to want. I'd like to try and get the sleeves out, cylinder sleeves, liners, whatever you want to call them, but I'm not sure how to do that. We'll have to come back to that, I guess. Gotta say, that is one of the strangest disassemblies I've seen. Usually you have you can just unbolt it right from the bottom. I mean, most 4 cylinders that I've seen anyway, but being a diesel may be a little slightly different, so I guess that might have something to do with it. Tore down quite a bit more than I thought. I didn't realize the complexity on some of that last bit, so this will be fun to get back together. All right, so this is what we pulled out. This is the one of the main bearings, and this kind of splits in half. There's 2 giant bolts that kind of squeeze it together, and then this is just kind of, oh, it's almost just kind of sitting in there very, very lightly. Now, there's 2 of these holes on here. There's a hole right here, and there's a hole right here, and one of those holes lines up with this right here on the top, and with that one it's going to the oil pump, so there's pressure through there, I believe. Basically what I'm trying to get at is when you take these apart and you take these out, it's very important the orientation when it goes back in place. You don't want those holes to be even off just a little bit, because you're going to lose oil pressure and you're going to cook your main bearings as soon as you start your engine. So it's going to get oil starved and it's not going to run right. So that's all I was trying to say there. You want to make sure that those go in properly. It's not a wear item. There is a bearing in here, and it doesn't look like it's in horrible shape. I mean, it's not the best either. It's got 190,000 miles on it, but you know what? We're going to replace these anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Just to give you a heads up on how that comes apart. I don't think this has been done on YouTube yet, so that's the first to see, for me at least, how one of these comes apart. Okay, I got a huge mess to clean up. If you guys have stayed and stuck through and watched this whole process, thank you very much. Please leave me a comment. Even if it's just to say, hey, I watched it till the end. That's really cool to see. I love seeing the comments, and I do try to respond to as many as I can. Currently at the moment, we're going to try and get the parts list together of what we need. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to get anything, but stay tuned. We may have some special coming up once we get this figured out. But we're going to start collecting parts for this. In the meantime, like, comment, subscribe, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.